Alien bullies arrive. It was a normal Tuesday when the world changed forever. The sun rose like it always did. People went to work, and kids complained about homework. No one knew that by lunchtime, Earth would have some very rude visitors. Jake was eating a sandwich in the park when he first saw them. At first, he thought it was a weird cloud. But clouds don't usually shine like metal or make a low humming sound. He dropped his sandwich and stared up at the sky with his mouth open. The alien ship was huge. It looked like someone had taken a skyscraper, turned it sideways, and made it fly. Smaller ships zipped around it like bees around a hive. They were all shiny and smooth, nothing like the clunky rockets humans used. Jake wasn't the only one who noticed. All around the world, people stopped what they were doing and looked up. In New York, taxi drivers forgot to honk their horns. In Tokyo, even the busiest businessmen stopped to gawk. And in a small village in Africa, a group of kids thought it was the coolest thing they'd ever seen. News spread fast. TVs, phones, and computers all showed the same thing. Alien ships over every major city. Some people panicked and ran around screaming. Others tried to hide under their beds, but most just stood there, wondering what would happen next. They didn't have to wait long. A voice boomed out from the ships, so loud it made windows rattle. "Attention, humans of Earth," the voice said in perfect English. "We are the Zorgans. We come from a galaxy far, far away. We've been watching you for a while, and honestly, we're not impressed." People looked at each other, confused. This wasn't how aliens were supposed to talk. Where was the take me to your leader stuff? The voice continued. "Your technology is primitive. Your spaceships look like toys. And don't even get us started on your fashion choices. We've seen better-dressed creatures living in swamps." Now people were getting angry. Sure, humans might not have fancy spaceships, but they didn't need to be so mean about it. In Washington, D.C., the President of the United States tried to look brave on TV. "We welcome our visitors from space," he said, his voice shaking a little. "We hope we can be friends and learn from each other." The Zorgans laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh bullies use when they think something is really stupid. "Learn from you," the alien voice said. "What could we possibly learn from a species that still thinks fossil fuels are a good idea? Our babies play with more advanced technology than your best scientists could even dream of." All around the world, scientists slumped in their chairs, feeling hurt and embarrassed. They'd worked so hard on their inventions, and now some alien jerks were making fun of them. The Zorgans weren't done yet. "We've decided to take over your planet," they announced. "Don't worry, we won't hurt you. We'll just, how do you say it? Yes, show you how it's done. You'll thank us later." People started to panic for real now. World leaders held emergency meetings, but they didn't know what to do. How could they fight aliens who were so much smarter and had such better technology? Some humans tried to be brave. In London, a group of teenagers threw rocks at one of the smaller alien ships. The rocks just bounced off, not even leaving a scratch. The ship turned and zapped the ground near the teens, leaving the smoking hole in the street. The message was clear: don't mess with us. As the day went on, things got worse. The aliens started changing stuff. They zapped old buildings and replaced them with weird, glowing structures. They sprayed something in the air that made all the cars stop working. And worst of all, they did something to the internet that made it only show Zorgan comedy shows. No one thought they were funny. By evening, most humans were hiding in their homes, peeking out of windows at their changed world. The Zorgans seemed to be everywhere, floating around in little bubbles and pointing at things like tourists. But not everyone had given up hope. In a secret room deep under the White House, the president met with his top advisors and military leaders. "There's got to be something we can do," he said, pounding his fist on the table. "We can't just let these bullies take over our planet." An old general shook his head. "Sir, our best weapons are like pea shooters to them. We don't stand a chance in a fight." Just then, a young woman in a lab coat burst into the room. Everyone turned to look at her. "Mr. President," she said, out of breath, "I'm Dr. Samantha Chen. I think I might have a way to stop the aliens." The president raised an eyebrow. "Go on, Dr. Chen. At this point, I'm willing to try anything." Dr. Chen took a deep breath. "Sir, what I'm about to tell you is top secret. For the past 5 years, my team and I have been working on something that could change everything." She pulled out a tablet and showed them a complicated diagram. "We'd found a way to access the 7th dimension, and we've built a ship that can travel through it." The room was silent for a moment. Then everyone started talking at once. The president held up his hand for quiet. "Dr. Chen," he said slowly, "are you telling me we have a secret weapon that might be even more advanced than the alien technology?" Dr. Chen nodded. "Yes, sir. But there's a catch. We've never actually tested it with people inside. It could be dangerous." The president looked around the room, then back at Dr. Chen. A small smile appeared on his face for the first time that day. "Well, doctor," he said, "I think it's time for a test drive. Let's show these Zorgans that humans aren't as primitive as they think." As the meeting broke up, there was a new energy in the room. For the first time since the aliens arrived, there was hope. The humans had a secret, and soon the aliens would learn that it's not nice to underestimate Earth. Little did the Zorgans know, their mockery was about to backfire in a way they could never have imagined. The stage was set for a showdown that would be remembered for generations to come. Humanity's hidden project. While the Zorgans were busy showing off in the skies above, something very different was happening deep underground. In a secret lab hidden beneath an old farm in Kansas, Dr. Samantha Chen and her team were working harder than ever. The lab didn't look like much from the outside. It was just an old barn, paint peeling and roof a bit crooked. But inside, it was like stepping into the future. Shiny metal walls, computers blinking everywhere, and in the center, a huge machine that looked like a mix between a rocket and a disco ball. Dr. Chen walked around the machine, checking things and muttering to herself. She was short, with messy black hair and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She didn't look like a typical hero. But right now, she might be humanity's best hope. "How's it looking, Sam?" asked Mike, her assistant. He was tall and skinny, always nibbling on something. Right now, it was a cookie he'd snuck from the break room. Sam sighed and pushed her glasses back up. "It's looking okay, I think. Maybe. Honestly, Mike, I have no idea if this thing will work or blow us all to bits." Mike nodded, taking another bite of his cookie. "So business as usual then." That made Sam smile a little. It was nice to have someone who could joke at a time like this. Just then, the big screen on the wall lit up. It was the president, looking tired and worried. "Dr. Chen," he said, "please tell me you have good news. The aliens are, well, they're being real jerks." Sam took a deep breath. "Mr. President, we're as ready as we'll ever be. The dimension hopper is fully built. We just need to test it." The president nodded. "And how long will that take?" Sam looked at Mike, then back at the screen. "Well, sir, normally we'd spend months running simulations and small-scale tests. But given the situation, we don't have months," the president finished for her. "No, sir, we don't." There was a long pause. Everyone in the lab held their breath, waiting. Finally, the president spoke. "Dr. Chen, I'm authorizing you to proceed with a full-scale test immediately. Whatever you need, you've got it. Just try not to blow up Kansas, okay?" Sam nodded, trying to look more confident than she felt. "Yes, sir. We'll do our best." As the screen went dark, the lab burst into action. People were running around, checking systems, and yelling numbers at each other. It was chaos, but organized chaos. Sam stood in the middle of it all, feeling like her heart might beat out of her chest. This was it, The moment they'd been working towards for years. And it had to work. It just had to. "Okay, team," she shouted, and everyone stopped to look at her. "I know we're scared. I know this isn't how we planned to do this. But right now, we're Earth's best shot. So let's show those alien bullies what humans can do." Cheer went up from the team. It wasn't very loud. Scientists aren't known for their cheering. But it was heartfelt. As everyone got back to work, Sam walked over to the dimension hopper. It was beautiful, in a weird, science-y way. All sleek lines and glowing parts. She put her hand on it, feeling the slight vibration of power running through it. "Please work," she whispered to it. "Please, please work." Mike came up beside her, offering half of his cookie. "Want some stress-eating fuel?" Sam laughed and took it. "Thanks, Mike. You know, when this is all over, I'm going to sleep for a week." "When this is all over, I'll personally tuck you in," Mike joked. Their moment of calm was interrupted by one of the younger scientists running up, looking excited. "Dr. Chen, Dr. Chen," he said, almost tripping over his words. "We just got some new data from the deep space monitors. You're not going to believe this." Sam took the tablet he was holding and looked at it. Her eyes went wide. Is this right?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The young scientist nodded so hard his glasses almost fell off. "Triple-checked, Dr. Chen. It's real." Sam looked at the data again, then at the dimension hopper, then back at the data. Slowly, a smile spread across her face. "Mike," she said, "I think we just got some very good news." Mike peered at the tablet. Sam. All I see are a bunch of squiggly lines." Sam laughed, feeling hopeful for the first time in days. "Those squiggly lines, my friend, are proof that the seventh dimension exists. And more importantly, they show that it's stable enough for us to enter." She turned to the rest of the team, holding up the tablet. "Everyone, we have confirmation. Project Dimension Hopper is go for launch." The lab erupted in cheers, real ones this time. People were hugging, high-fiving, and a few were even crying. Years of work, of doubt, of being called crazy by other scientists. It was all worth it for this moment. As the celebration continued around her, Sam walked back to the dimension hopper. She placed her hand on it again, this time with newfound confidence. "All right, you beautiful machine," she said softly. "Let's go save the world." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Final checks were made, systems were calibrated, and a test crew was chosen. Sam, of course, insisted on being part of it. "No way am I staying behind," she told Mike when he suggested maybe she should monitor from the lab. "This is my baby. I'm going with it." As they prepared to board the dimension hopper, Sam took one last look around the lab. Her team was watching, a mix of excitement and worry on their faces. She gave them a thumbs up, trying to look braver than she felt. Just before she stepped inside, Mike caught her arm. "Hey, Sam," he said, looking serious for once. "Come back safe, okay? We've still got a lot of science to do." Sam smiled and nodded. "You bet. Keep the coffee hot. I'll be back before you know it." With that, she entered the dimension hopper. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. Inside, it was surprisingly cozy, like a small, high-tech living room with lots of buttons. Sam took her seat at the main console. Her hands were shaking a little as she started the power-up sequence. Lights came on, screens lit up, and a low hum filled the air. "This is Dr. Samantha Chen," she said into the comm. "Dimension Hopper is powered up and ready for launch. Commencing test flight in T-10 seconds." As she counted down, Sam thought about everything that had led to this moment. The late nights, the failed experiments, the times she'd almost given up. And now, here she was, about to make history. If it worked. 3, 2, 1. Sam took a deep breath and pressed the big red button. Launch. The world outside the dimension hopper seemed to stretch and twist. Colors swirled in impossible ways. For a moment, Sam felt like she was everywhere and nowhere at once. Then, with a flash of light and a sound like a thunderclap, the Dimension Hopper vanished from the lab. Project Dimension Hopper was underway. The question was, where or when would they end up, and would it be enough to save Earth from the Zorgons? As the dust settled in the now empty launch area, Mike stared at the spot where the Dimension Hopper had been. He took a bite of his cookie, then said to no one in particular, "Well, that was cool." The breakthrough. The Dimension Hopper disappeared in a flash of light, leaving behind a stunned silence in the underground lab. For a moment, nobody moved. Then all hell broke loose. "We did it!" someone shouted, and suddenly everyone was cheering, hugging, and jumping up and down. Even the usually serious scientists were acting like kids at a birthday party. Mike, however, wasn't celebrating. He stood staring at the empty spot where the Dimension Hopper had been, munching on his last cookie. Guys," he said, but nobody heard him over the noise. He tried again, louder. "Hey, guys." The room went quiet, everyone turning to look at him. "I hate to be that guy," Mike said, brushing cookie crumbs off his shirt. "But how do we know if it worked? I mean, they're gone, sure. But gone where? Or when?" The mood in the room suddenly changed. Excited faces turned worried. Mike was right. They had no idea if Dr. Chen and her team had made it safely to the seventh dimension, or if they'd just disappeared. Just then, a loud beeping came from one of the computers. A young scientist named Emily rushed over to it, her eyes wide as she read the screen. "Oh my God," she whispered. Then louder, "Oh my God, we're getting a signal." Everyone crowded around the computer, trying to see. On the screen was a message, simple but amazing. "Hello from DE7TH Dimension. All okay. Place eyes what we are. Send coffee. Sam." The lab erupted in cheers again, even louder than before. They'd done it. They'd really done it. Humans had entered the seventh dimension. Meanwhile, in a place that was definitely not Kansas anymore, Dr. Samantha Chen was having the weirdest experience of her life. The seventh dimension wasn't anything like she'd imagined. It wasn't really a place, at least not in the way we think of places. It was more like being inside a thought. Colors that didn't exist on Earth swirled around her. Shapes that shouldn't be possible bent and twisted in ways that made her eyes hurt if she looked too long. "Is everyone okay?" Sam asked, looking around at her small crew. There were 3 of them. Sam, a tough-looking woman named Jess, who was their security expert, and a nerdy guy named Raj who knew more about quantum physics than should be possible for a human brain. Jess nodded, her hand on her gun like she was expecting trouble. "All good, boss. But where the hell are we?" Raj was staring out the window, his mouth open in awe. "We're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. This is amazing." Sam smiled. Leave it to Raj to be excited about breaking the laws of physics. She turned back to the controls, trying to make sense of the readings. Nothing seemed to work the way it should here. "Okay, team," she said, trying to sound confident. "We made it. Now we just need to figure out how to use this place to our advantage. Any ideas?" Jess frowned. "Can we, I don't know, hop back into our dimension right in the middle of the alien mothership and blow it up?" Sam shook her head. "Too risky. We don't know how stable our connection to our dimension is. We could end up anywhere, or anywhen." "Ooh," Raj said, bouncing in his seat like an excited puppy. "What if we use the unique properties of this dimension to enhance our technology? We could create weapons or defenses the Zorgons have never seen before." Sam nodded slowly. "That might actually work." "Good thinking, Raj." For the next few hours, if hours even meant anything in this place, they'd worked on understanding the seventh dimension. Sam and Raj ran calculations and tests, while Jess kept an eye out for, well, anything. Who knew what might live in a place like this? Back on Earth, things weren't going so well. The Zorgans were getting bolder, zapping more buildings and turning them into weird alien structures. They'd even started improving people's pets, giving dogs extra legs and making cats glow in the dark. In Washington, D.C., the president was trying to keep everyone calm. "My fellow Americans," he said on TV, looking tired but determined, "I know things seem bad right now. But I promise you, we have our best people working on a solution. We will not let these alien bullies push us around." What the president didn't say was that their best people were currently lost in another dimension. He just hoped they'd come back with something useful. And soon. In the underground lab, Mike and the team were working around the clock, trying to stay in contact with the dimension hopper. It wasn't easy. Sometimes, the signals came through clear as day. Other times, they got nothing but static for hours. "Think we've something." Sam's voice crackled through the speakers, cutting in and out. "Weapon that. Zorgan ships." Mike leaned closer to the mic. Sam, we're losing you. Say again about the weapon." But the signal was gone. Mike slumped in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. "Come on, Sam," he muttered. "What did you find?" Inside the dimension hopper, Sam was getting frustrated. "Damn it," she said, hitting the communication panel. "We finally figure out something useful, and we can't even tell them about it." "Maybe we should head back," Jess suggested. "We can explain everything in person." Sam was about to agree when Raj let out a yelp. "Guys, look at this." They all turned to see what Raj was pointing at. Outside the ship, the swirling colors of the seventh dimension were starting to form a pattern. It looked almost like a map. "Holy crap," Sam whispered. "Is that what I think it is?" Raj nodded, his eyes wide with excitement. "It's a map of dimensions, all of them, including ours and the Zorgans." Suddenly, everything clicked into place for Sam. This was it. This was how they could save Earth. "Change of plans," she said, a grin spreading across her face. "We're not going back yet. We're going to pay the Zorgans' home dimension a little visit." Jess smiled, patting her gun. "Now you're talking my language, boss." As they prepared to jump to another dimension, Sam felt a mix of excitement and fear. They were about to go where no human had gone before, into the heart of alien territory. It was dangerous, maybe even crazy. But sometimes, Sam thought, you have to do something crazy to save the world. With a deep breath, she hit the button to activate the dimension hopper. The ship hummed to life. The colors outside swirled faster, and then, flash, they were gone, leaving behind an empty pocket of the seventh dimension. The map of dimensions swirled and faded, like it had never been there at all. Back on Earth, in the underground lab, a new message appeared on the computer screen. Mike, who had fallen asleep at his desk, didn't see it. But if he had, it would have made him spill his coffee. "Phone to zero or join home. Going in. Might be late for Diane. Sam." The breakthrough had been made. Now, it was time for action. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and it all depended on three humans lost in dimensions they barely understood. But if anyone could pull off a miracle, it was Dr. Samantha Chen and her team. The Zorgans had no idea what was coming for them. Preparation for revelation. While Dr. Chen and her team were off exploring alien dimensions, things on Earth were getting worse. The Zorgans were everywhere, changing things left and right. They turned the Eiffel Tower into a giant corkscrew, made all the fish in the oceans glow like neon signs, and worst of all, they replaced all the world's ice cream with some weird alien goop that tasted like old socks. People were getting angry. In New York, a group of teenagers spray-painted "Zorgans Go Home" on the side of an alien ship. The Zorgans just laughed and turned the graffiti into a bouquet of singing flowers. In the underground lab in Kansas, Mike was having a hard time. He hadn't slept in days, living on coffee and stale donuts. He kept staring at the computer screen, waiting for another message from Sam. "Come on, Sam," he muttered. tapping his fingers on the desk. "Where are you?" Just then, the computer beeped. Mike jumped up so fast, he knocked over his coffee mug. He didn't even notice as he read the new message. "Found the origin WEAKNES. Coming home. Get PY's eyes down to ready. Sam." Mike's tired face broke into a huge grin. "Yes," he shouted, pumping his fist in the air. Then he remembered he was supposed to be a serious scientist and tried to look calm. "I mean, excellent news. Very good." He quickly called Washington. "Mr. President," he said when the call connected, "Dr. Chen is coming back, and she says she's found a way to beat the Zorgans." The president, who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, suddenly perked up. "That's the best news I've heard since this whole mess started. When will she be here?" Mike opened his mouth to answer, then realized he had no idea. Soon," he said, hoping it was true. The president nodded. "Good enough. I'll start making preparations. We need to be ready to move as soon as Dr. Chen arrives." As Mike hung up, he wondered what kind of preparations the president meant. He hoped it involved a lot of big guns, and maybe some tanks. Alien fighting tanks would be cool. Meanwhile, in a dimension that definitely wasn't Earth's, the dimension hopper appeared with a flash and a pop. Inside, Sam, Jess, and Raj looked a bit worse for wear. Their hair was all crazy, like they'd been in a wind tunnel, and their eyes were wide and a little wild. "Well," Sam said, trying to smooth down her hair, "that was interesting." Jess snorted. "Interesting. We almost got eaten by a planet-sized space worm." "But we didn't," Raj pointed out, still looking excited despite everything. "And we got the data we needed. We know how to beat the Zorgans now." Sam nodded, her face serious. "Yes, we do. And now we need to get back to Earth and put our plan into action." She turned to the ship's controls, her fingers flying over the buttons. The dimension hopper hummed to life, ready to take them home. "Hold on to your butts," Sam said with a grin. "This might be a bumpy ride." With another flash and pop, they were gone, racing through dimensions back to Earth. Back in Washington, the president was busy getting things ready. He called in the top generals, the best scientists. Well, the best ones who weren't already working with Sam, and even a few regular people who were known for being really good in a crisis. "Listen up, everyone," the president said, looking more energetic than he had in weeks. "Dr. Chen is coming back with a plan to defeat the Zorgans. We need to be ready to move fast when she gets here." One of the generals raised his hand. "Sir, what about our military? The Zorgans have disabled most of our weapons." The president nodded. "I know. That's why we're going to try something different. Something the Zorgans won't expect." He turned to a woman in the back of the room. She looked ordinary, like someone's mom, but there was a spark in her eye that said she was tougher than she looked. "Mrs. Johnson," the president said, "you're in charge of Operation Bake Sale." Mrs. Johnson grinned and cracked her knuckles. "Yes, sir. Those aliens won't know what hit them." The president then pointed to a teenage boy who was fiddling with his phone. "Kevin, you're heading up the social media blitz. I want every meme, every tweet, every TikTok video aimed at making the Zorgans look silly." Kevin looked up from his phone, his eyes wide. "For real?" Yes, Mr. President. I won't let you down." As the meeting went on, plans were made, ideas were thrown around, and slowly, a strategy began to take shape. It wasn't like any battle plan in history. There were no tanks, no fighter jets, no fancy weapons. Instead, there were potluck dinners, flash mobs, and something involving a lot of rubber ducks. "Sir," one of the generals said, looking confused, "are you sure about this? It doesn't seem very military." The president smiled. "That's exactly the point, General. The Zorgans expect us to fight. They don't expect us to be human." Just then, there was a commotion outside. The door burst open, and Mike ran in. out of breath and looking excited. "Mr. President," he gasped, "they're back. Dr. Chen and her team are back." The room erupted in cheers. The president stood up, straightening his tie. "All right, people, this is it. Let's go meet our heroes and save the world." As they all filed out of the room, heading to meet Sam and her team, there was a feeling of hope in the air. For the first time since the Zorgans arrived, it felt like Earth might have a chance. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Word had spread fast that something big was happening. People lined the streets, watching and waiting. With a flash of light and a sound like thunder, the dimension hopper appeared in the middle of the street. Steam hissed from its sides as the door slowly opened. Dr. Samantha Chen stepped out, blinking in the sunlight. She looked tired but determined. Behind her, Jess and Raj followed, carrying strange-looking devices. The crowd went wild, cheering and clapping. Sam looked surprised for a moment, then smiled and waved. The president pushed through the crowd, reaching out to shake Sam's hand. "Dr. Chen," he said, "welcome back. I hear you have a plan to save us all." Sam nodded, her face serious. "I do, Mr. President, but it's going to take all of us working together, and it might sound a little weird." The president grinned. "Weird is exactly what we're prepared for, Doctor. Now let's go show these organs what humans are really made of." As they walked back to the White House, Sam explaining her plan in hushed tones, the crowd followed. There was excitement in the air, a feeling that something big was about to happen. The Zorgans, floating above in their shiny ships, had no idea what was coming. They thought they had Earth all figured out, but they were about to learn that humans were full of surprises. The stage was set. The players were ready. It was time for Earth to fight back, in the most unexpected way possible. Operation Humanity's Weirdest Hour was about to begin. The grand unveiling. The day had finally come. Earth was ready to show the Zorgans what humans were really made of. As the sun rose, people all over the world put the final touches on their part of the plan. In New York, a group of Broadway performers warmed up their voices. In Tokyo, sushi chefs sharpened their knives with extra care. And in a small town in Texas, a group of grandmas checked their knitting needles one last time. Dr. Samantha Chen stood in front of the White House, looking up at the huge Zorgan ship hovering above. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. "You ready for this?" Mike asked, standing next to her with a cup of coffee in his hand. Sam nodded, a determined look on her face. "As ready as I'll ever be. Let's hope this crazy plan works." The president stepped up, straightening his tie. "Dr. Chen, the world is counting on us. Are you sure this will work?" Sam looked at him, a slight smile on her face. "Mr. President, I'm not sure of anything anymore. But I do know one thing. The Zorgans won't see this coming." Just then, a beam of light shot down from the Zorgan ship. 3 aliens appeared, floating a few feet off the ground. They looked like giant purple octopuses wearing business suits, which would have been funny if they weren't so scary. "Humans," the lead Zorgan said, its voice sounding like a squeaky toy being stepped on. "We grow tired of your pitiful attempts to resist us. It is time for you to accept your new role as our pets." The president stepped forward, trying to look brave. "Now see here, Mr. Zorgan. We humans have something to show you, something that might change your mind about us." The Zorgans laughed, a sound like 1,000 balloons being popped at once. "Oh, this should be amusing. Please, entertain us with your primitive Earth thing." Sam nodded to Mike, who pressed a button on a remote control. Suddenly, music started playing all around the world. It was a catchy tune, something you might hear in a cheesy commercial. The Zorgans looked confused. "What is this noise?" That's when things got weird. In New York, the Broadway performers burst into song, dancing down the streets. Their song was all about the joys of Earth, hot dogs, roller coasters, and bad reality TV shows. In Tokyo, The sushi chefs started making sushi faster than anyone had ever seen, creating pictures of smiling Earth and grumpy Zorgons with their colorful rolls. And in that small town in Texas, the grandma started knitting at super speed, creating a giant blanket that said, "Earth, home of the free, land of the weird," in less than a minute. All over the world, humans were doing what they did best, being creative, silly, and completely unpredictable. The Zorgons floated there, their tentacles drooping in confusion. What is happening?" the leader asked, its voice no longer sounding so sure. Sam stepped forward, a big grin on her face. "This, my dear Zorgons, is humanity. We're showing you what makes us special." As she spoke, more crazy things were happening. In Australia, a group of surfers rode a giant wave while playing ukuleles. In Brazil, a soccer team was playing a match against a team of trained monkeys. The monkeys were winning. The Zorgons were spinning around, trying to take it all in. They looked dizzy and more than a little freaked out. But this makes no sense. One of them squeaked. "Where are your weapons? Your armies?" The president laughed. "We don't need those to show you what humans can do. We've got something much better: imagination." Just then, Sam's team wheeled out the dimension hopper. It had been painted in bright colors and decorated with glitter and streamers. It looked like a disco ball had exploded on it. "And this," Sam said, patting the ship, "is our secret weapon. We call it the dimension hopper. Want to see what it can do?" Before the Zorgons could answer, Sam hit a button. The dimension hopper started to glow, and suddenly, portals began opening up all around them. Through one portal, they could see a world made entirely of candy. Through another, a planet where everything was upside down. And through a third, a dimension where cats ruled and humans were their pets. The Zorgons' eyes, all 27 of them, were wide with shock. "Impossible," the leader gasped. You can travel between dimensions." Sam nodded, trying not to look too smug. "Yep, and we found some pretty interesting things in our travels, including," she paused for dramatic effect, "your home dimension." The Zorgons went pale, which for a purple octopus is quite a feat. You wouldn't," one of them stammered. "Oh, we wouldn't do anything bad," Sam assured them. "We're not like that. But we did leave a few surprises for your leaders back home. I think they're about to get a taste of Earth culture." As if on cue, a portal opened showing the Zorgon homeworld. Their grand leaders were suddenly surrounded by a flash mob of dancing kittens, while the sky rained gummy bears. The Zorgons on Earth watched in horror as their dignified leaders were buried under a mountain of fluffy cuteness and sugary treats. This is too much," the lead Zorgon cried. "We surrender. Please, just make it stop." The president stepped forward, trying not to laugh. "We'll be happy to, on one condition. You leave Earth alone and never try to conquer us again. Deal?" The Zorgons nodded so hard their tentacles flopped around like wet noodles. "Deal. We'll leave right away." As the Zorgons scrambled back to their ship, tripping over their tentacles in their hurry to get away from the craziness of Earth, cheers erupted from the crowd. Sam turned to the president, a tired but happy smile on her face. "Well, Mr. President, I think we did it. We saved Earth with weirdness." The president shook her hand, grinning from ear to ear. "Dr. Chen, you and your team are heroes. We're heroes, but heroes nonetheless." As the Zorgon ships took off, flying away as fast as they could, humans all over the world celebrated. They danced in the streets, hugged strangers, and ate way too much ice cream, the real kind, not the alien sock-flavored goop. In the sky above, fireworks exploded in shapes of smiling Earths and confused-looking octopuses. A new era had begun, one where Earth was known across the galaxy as the weirdest, most creative, and most fun planet around. And as for the Zorgons, well, let's just say they learned an important lesson. Never underestimate the power of human weirdness. It might just save the world. Tables turned. As the Zorgon ships disappeared into the sky, leaving behind a trail of glitter, nobody was sure how that happened. The world erupted in the biggest party Earth had ever seen. From New York to Tokyo, from Rio to Moscow, people danced in the streets, sang at the top of their lungs, and hugged total strangers. In Washington, D.C., Dr. Samantha Chen and her team were being treated like rock stars. People kept asking for their autographs and trying to take selfies with them. Sam, who was usually more comfortable with test tubes than crowds, looked a bit overwhelmed. "I didn't think saving the world would involve so much attention," she said to Mike, trying to hide behind him as another group of fans approached. Mike grinned, clearly enjoying the spotlight. "Come on, Sam. We're heroes. Might as well enjoy it." Just then, the president walked up, a big smile on his face. "Dr. Chen, I can't thank you enough for what you've done. You and your team have saved humanity." Sam blushed, shuffling her feet. "Thank you, Mr. President. But it wasn't just us. It was everyone, all over the world, being, well, human." The president nodded. "That's true. And speaking of being human, I have a surprise for you all." He led them to a big stage that had been set up in front of the White House. As they climbed the steps, Sam could see a huge crowd gathered below. It looked like half the city had shown up. The president stepped up to the microphone. "My fellow Americans and citizens of the world," he began, his voice booming out over speakers. "Today, we celebrate not just our victory over the Zorgons, but the triumph of the human spirit." The crowd cheered so loud Sam thought her ears might pop. "And now," the president continued, "I have a special announcement. In honor of our heroes who made this victory possible, we are establishing a new government agency, the Department of Interdimensional Affairs." More cheers erupted from the crowd. Sam and her team looked at each other in shock. "Dr. Samantha Chen," the president said, turning to her, "will you do us the honor of becoming our first Secretary of Interdimensional Affairs?" Sam's mouth fell open. She looked at Mike and Raj, who were nodding enthusiastically. Yes," she finally managed to say. The crowd went wild. Sam felt like she might faint. She, the nerdy scientist who used to get picked last for everything in school, was now a hero and a government official. It was a lot to take in. As the celebration continued on Earth, things were a bit different on the Zorgon homeworld. The Zorgon leaders, still picking gummy bears out of their tentacles, were not happy. "We were supposed to conquer them," the supreme Zorgon leader squeaked, pounding its tentacle on the table. "How did this happen?" One of the other leaders, looking sheepish, which is quite a feat for an octopus, spoke up. "Well, sir, it seems we may have underestimated the humans." "Underestimated," the supreme leader screeched. "They defeated us with dancing kittens and candy rain. It's humiliating." Just then, a young Zorgon burst into the room, waving a piece of paper. Sirs, you need to see this." The leaders gathered around, their eyes, all 243 of them, widening as they read. This can't be right," one of them muttered. But it was. The paper showed that since their defeat, Zorgon popularity in the galaxy had plummeted. Nobody wanted to trade with them anymore. Other alien races were canceling their vacations to Zorgon resorts. Even their famous tentacle tango dance clubs were empty. Meanwhile, everybody was talking about Earth. The planet that had been seen as a backwater world was now the coolest place in the galaxy. Aliens from all over were lining up to visit, eager to see the world that had defeated the mighty Zorgons with weirdness and creativity. Back on Earth, Sam was settling into her new role. The Department of Interdimensional Affairs had been given a cool, super-secret underground base, because every cool government agency needs one of those. Sam walked through the halls, still not quite believing it was real. There were labs filled with strange, glowing equipment. There was a room full of portals leading to different dimensions, carefully guarded, of course. And there was even a cafeteria that served food from across the multiverse, The Dimension 7 tacos were a big hit, even if they did occasionally try to eat you back. As she entered her office, Sam found Mike and Raj waiting for her. They both looked excited. "Sam," Raj said, bouncing on his toes, "you won't believe what we just found out." Sam raised an eyebrow. After everything that had happened, she wasn't sure anything could surprise her anymore. "What is it?" Mike grinned. "Remember how we left those surprises for the Zorgon leaders? Well, it turns out they had some unexpected side effects." He handed her a report. Sam's eyes widened as she read it. "Are you serious? The Zorgons are changing?" Raj nodded enthusiastically. "Yep. All that exposure to Earth culture is having a big impact. They're becoming, well, more fun." The report showed images of Zorgons trying to dance like humans, which looked hilarious with all those tentacles, attempting to tell jokes, even if they didn't quite get the punchlines right, and even starting their own ice cream shops, though the flavors were a bit odd. Who wants tentacle twirl ripple? Sam couldn't help but laugh. "Well, I guess we didn't just save Earth. We might have saved the Zorgons from themselves, too." Just then, an alarm went off. Red lights started flashing, and a voice came over the intercom. "Alert. Dimensional anomaly detected." Sam, Mike, and Raj rushed to the control room. On the big screen, they could see a swirling portal opening up right in the middle of Times Square in New York. "Oh no," Sam muttered. "What now?" They watched nervously as something began to emerge from the portal. Was it a new threat? Another alien invasion? But as the figure stepped out, they all gasped in surprise. It was a Zorgon, but not like any Zorgon they'd seen before. This one was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, sunglasses, and had a camera around its neck, or what passed for a neck on a Zorgon. The Zorgon looked around, then held up a sign. In big friendly letters, it read, "First Zorgon tourist on Earth. Can I GTA is the LF?" Hi. Sam, Mike, and Raj looked at each other, then burst out laughing. It seemed that humanity's weirdness hadn't just saved the world, it had changed the galaxy. As news of the friendly Zorgon tourists spread, people all over Earth smiled. The tables had truly turned. The aliens who had once mocked humans now wanted to be just like them. And as for Sam and her team, well, they knew their adventures were just beginning. After all, with an entire multiverse to explore, who knew what kind of weird and wonderful things they'd discover next? One thing was for sure, life on Earth would never be boring again. New horizons. A year had passed since the day Earth defeated the Zorgons with weirdness and creativity. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Dr. Samantha Chen stood at the window of her office in the Department of Interdimensional Affairs, looking out at the Washington, D.C. skyline. But it wasn't the skyline she remembered from a year ago. Now, alongside the familiar monuments and buildings, there were strange and wonderful additions. A giant, floating jellyfish-shaped building hovered near the Washington Monument. It was the new intergalactic embassy, where representatives from dozens of alien races came to meet with Earth's leaders. Next to it, a spiral tower that seemed to defy gravity housed the University of Multidimensional Studies, where humans and aliens alike studied the mysteries of the universe. Sam smiled as she watched a group of tourist Zorgons, easily recognizable in their brightly colored Hawaiian shirts and oversized sunglasses, taking selfies in front of the White House. Who would have thought that the aliens who once tried to conquer Earth would become its biggest fans? A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Mike and Raj entered, both looking excited. Mike was carrying a stack of papers, while Raj had a holographic display floating above his palm. "Sam, you're not going to believe this," Raj said, his eyes wide with excitement. Sam raised an eyebrow. After everything that had happened in the past year, she wasn't sure anything could surprise her anymore. "Try me," she said with a smile. Mike spread the papers on her desk. "We've been analyzing the data from our latest dimensional scans. And well, just look." Sam leaned over the desk, her eyes scanning the complex equations and diagrams. Slowly, her eyes widened. Is this saying what I think it's saying? Raj nodded enthusiastically. Yep. We've discovered a whole new set of dimensions. It's like finding a door to a room you never knew existed in your own house. Sam felt a familiar thrill of excitement. This was why she loved science. There was always something new to discover, always another mystery to solve. We need to organize an expedition right away, she said, already making plans in her head. We'll need to modify the dimension hopper, run some simulations, maybe even. She was interrupted by another knock on the door. This time, it was her assistant, looking a bit flustered. I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Chen, the assistant said, but you have some unusual visitors. Before Sam could ask what she meant, the door burst open and in walked. Well, Sam wasn't quite sure what they were. They looked a bit like walking rainbows, shimmering and changing colors as they moved. Greetings, humans, one of the rainbow beings said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. We are the spectrals from the 42nd dimension. We heard you were the fun ones in this part of the multiverse. Sam, Mike, and Raj looked at each other, then burst out laughing. Just another day at the Department of Interdimensional Affairs. As Sam chatted with the spectrals, learning about their dimension and their culture, apparently, they communicated primarily through interpretive dance. She couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed. A year ago, she had been a scientist working in a secret underground lab, trying to save the world from alien invaders. Now she was having a casual conversation with beings from the 42nd dimension, discussing the possibility of a multidimensional dance-off competition. Later that day, Sam found herself in a meeting with the president, updating him on the latest interdimensional developments. So, Dr. Chen, the president said, leaning back in his chair, how are our friends the Zorgans doing? Sam grinned. Well, sir, it seems they've become quite the sensation back in their home dimension. Zorgan kids are begging their parents for trips to Earth. Zorgan fashion designers are trying to figure out how to make Hawaiian shirts work with tentacles, and I hear their version of pizza, with extra-dimensional toppings, is becoming quite popular across the galaxy. The president chuckled. Who would have thought? From would-be conquerors to our biggest fans, and all because we showed them how to have fun. It just goes to show, Sam said, sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy is to make them your friend. As she left the White House, Sam decided to take a walk through the National Mall. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city. Humans and aliens mingled together, chatting, laughing, and enjoying the evening. Near the Lincoln Memorial, a group of Zorgan tourists were trying to figure out how to eat ice cream cones with their tentacles. It was a messy but hilarious sight. A little human girl, giggling, showed them how to do it properly. By the reflecting pool, a street performer was putting on a show, juggling what looked like miniature planets. His audience was a mix of humans, Zorgans, and several other alien species Sam couldn't even name. As she walked, Sam's phone buzzed. It was a message from Raj. Sam, the spectrals want to know if we're up for a multidimensional karaoke night. You in? Sam laughed and texted back, absolutely. But fair warning, my singing might open up a few unintended dimensional portals. Looking up at the sky, Sam could see the faint shimmer of the planetary defense shield, a gift from a grateful alien race after Earth had helped them solve their century-long drought problem. Beyond it, the stars twinkled, each one potentially holding new worlds, new dimensions, new friends to meet. Sam thought back to that day a year ago when the Zorgans had first arrived, mocking humanity and thinking they had Earth all figured out. How wrong they had been. Humans, with all their weirdness, creativity, and ability to adapt, had not only saved themselves but had changed the very fabric of the multiverse. As she turned to head home, Sam saw a young boy staring up at the sky with wonder in his eyes. She remembered feeling that same sense of awe when she first looked through a telescope as a child. Pretty cool, huh? she said to the boy. He nodded, his eyes wide. Do you think I could visit other dimensions someday? He asked. Sam smiled. Kid, in this new world, you could do anything. You might discover a new dimension, or invent a way to talk to stars, or maybe even figure out how to make pizza that tastes good to every species in the universe. The possibilities are endless. The boy grinned, his imagination clearly running wild with the possibilities. As Sam continued her walk home, she felt a sense of excitement for what the future might hold. Earth had faced its greatest challenge and had not only survived but thrived. They had turned enemies into friends, opened up new realms of science and exploration, and shown the universe that sometimes the best way to be is just to be yourself, weirdness and all. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, and the sky lit up with a spectacular light show. A nightly gift from their new friends, the spectrals. As colors danced across the sky, Sam couldn't help but laugh. Life on Earth would never be boring again. And she, for one, couldn't wait to see what dimension they'd explore next. The end, or perhaps just the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure.